At this time, I welcome Mr. Davey Gerhard III to the stage. I'm going to introduce him, and then I'm going to go sit down and watch him. So, Davey has served as the Executive Director for TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, since 2020, bringing decades of fundraising leadership and the theology of generosity to his work. A lifetime student of theology and policy, Davey believes that the best conversations happen at the intersection of money and meaning, and that our gratitude for God's abundance leads us to generosity. In his work with TENS, he works with congregations and dioceses on teaching the essential practices of abundance. The results often lead to more funds being raised, but the real goal is to experience the disciples who understand the connection between gratitude and generosity. Other professional experience in 3 decades of work includes 12 years on diocesan staff in stewardship ministries in the Diocese of California, years of fundraising for the YMCA, curriculum development for Episcopal evangelism and stewardship ministries, and public policy and fundraising consulting for municipal governments and nonprofits. Davey holds degrees from the Episcopal Divinity School, the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and Kalamazoo College. He lives, works, and worships in San Francisco, California, where he enjoys entertaining, cooking, farmers markets, and travel.
It sounds like me.
Mr. Davey Gerhard, thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Haynes, for that welcome, and for you all for inviting me here today. I loved leaving San Francisco during Super Bowl weekend. It was great to get out of that madness and be in this madness, which is really beautiful work. I love that I get to follow the future of the church at play, looking at camp and seeing people who are being formed in the spirit and the work of the church, and then this amazing group of postulants and candidates taking their next step forward in ordained ministry. What a beautiful thing to follow. Not so excited about following the voting, but I promise no voting here today anymore. So let's talk a little bit about generosity. I got to hang out with y'all last night at the opening reception, and it was really beautiful to hear lots of stories. Many of you have used our TENS curriculum in your stewardship ministries, and I got to hear some stories about that. But you know what? Very few people talked about the money they raised. What they talked about was the spirit that they raised, the generosity, the awareness, the community, the relationships. And yeah, we are about raising funds for ministry and funding our ministry, but what we're really about is telling our stories and developing community. I don't have a clicker, so my clicking is going to be, next slide, please. What I hope we can talk about this afternoon is how to stay mission-focused when we're thinking about money, reminding ourselves that money and mission are tied together. And in the church, you can't have one without the other. At least you shouldn't have one without the other. And we're going to talk about your congregation and what your ministry is, because that's what you do. You're in the work of that all the time. And then we're going to go a step up and talk about diocesan ministry and how it supports you and how you relate to it. And at the end, I hope that you can develop your own story of abundance, gratitude, and generosity, so that when folks ask you why you support church, you have an answer for them. Next slide, please. So, when your vestry reviews the church budget every month, you probably check in with the actuals versus the year to date. That's good fiscal policy, right? You take a look at where things are over budget, maybe where there's room to grow. You take a look at those pledge redemptions. Is everybody paying on time? And you look at the bottom line. Well, congratulations. That's one thing that you need to do as a vestry, but it's only the beginning of the story of how we talk about money in the church. Budgets tell us what we belong to and what belongs to us. And that, when we take a budget and we look at it as a story, we look at it as mission, then we start to understand that it's not just a spreadsheet of numbers. It's not just a red or a black number at the bottom of it. What it is a story of what we have and how we share it. Next slide, please. Okay, so the other things vestry does with budget, or your finance committee perhaps, is maybe you start to talk about how many people are serving in the outreach ministry, those other goals of our stewardship programs, right? Maybe you start to look at how are we doing with our attendance numbers? Are we growing? Are we staying the same? What are we seeing? Maybe you start to look at volunteer signups. Are people coming when we issue the call? Those are things that vestries look at. Maybe you're starting to look at how much visibility do we have in our community? What's the work of the Spirit? And that's the second goal of our vestry responsibility when we talk about money and mission and budgets. It's also that beautiful work of relationship and community. So when we talk about money in the church, we're really talking about belonging, responsibility, and shared mission. None of that's about your bank account. What that is about responsibility, belonging, and shared mission. Next slide. People ask me all the time, what's stewardship? Why do we do this? Why do we use that word? And stewardship's one of those words in the church that is so used that it's overused. People have their own definition of it. I'm going to try and open it up a little bit for us and say that it's the understanding of how all our gifts are shared in abundance relative to the gratitude we have for the generosity demonstrated in their bestowing. So that connection between abundance, gratitude, and generosity. God created and gave everything. We received everything. We share everything, and we're grateful for that. So reframed, our gratitude, this is where it starts, our gratitude for God's abundant love in creating and giving everything to us leads us to respond with generosity. That's stewardship. When we can respond to God's call and share not just our wallet or our other resources, but our time, our good ideas, our wisdom, that's stewardship. That's taking everything that's been created and using it for a purpose of mission. Next slide, please. You've heard time, talent, and treasure a lot when you've talked about stewardship. I bet we've been using that those three T's for a long time, and I love them. I use them. You'll probably hear them slip out of my mouth today. But we're trying to reframe this also at TENS and talk about the 3 R's: relationships, resources, and responses. Because these, I think, better describe the complexity of who we are in church and what we're trying to do when we share. What are our relationships about? I've created a small list here, and we could go on forever in generating ideas, but those relational things that we do about loving each other, caring for each other, forgiving each other, supporting each other, listening, giving, receiving, learning, teaching. This is how we do the relational work of church. Jesus calls us into that work, to love each other, to love our neighbor, to love ourselves. This is the work of relationships. Moving on in our R's with the next slide. We look at resources. Anything is a resource. If it's a noun, it's a resource. And it's been created for you and given to you to steward, to grow, and to share. Every single thing is a resource. And we have some specific ones in church that we think of. Our scripture and our traditions, our wisdom, the way we gather in prayer, the way we form leaders, the way we develop and share our energy, our music, our craft. I heard lots of stories last night at the reception about people who were excited to sing in the choir and share their gift of music. Those are resources. Those are gifts that have been given. Those are nouns that we have to describe what God has given us and how we can then use that and form it. Anything that can be learned, taught, cultivated, and shared is a resource, and we're called to share them all. It doesn't start and stop with our checkbook. It goes deep into who we are and how we were formed. Let's take a look at our responses on the next slide, because this is where the rubber meets the road. When we understand that we are deep in relationship with each other, that we are the kin that we do not hide, that we are the body, then we understand how our resources can be used and shared, and we respond to that. We respond with generosity and gratitude. Some of the ways we do that in church, we place an offering in the plate. We make an annual commitment of our time, talent, and treasure. There they are, T's. We volunteer. We show up. We make a gift from our estate, or think about long-term giving to the church, and so many other ways. We respond to God all the time in the way God is calling us. And when we respond, God calls us yet again deeper and deeper into relationship. The goal here is not just to give more, to give till it hurts, to sacrifice. No, the goal is to give in the spirit of joy and thankfulness, in the ways that best reflect our present circumstances and reflect God's generous love for us. If we truly thought about that when filling out our pledge card, what kinds of gifts would we give? What kinds of responses would we have to God's call? This is the work of our stewardship committees, and we often task them with raising a goal. Raise this much money, do this work, run this campaign. Do we think of them as teaching us this process? Maybe we should. Maybe there's something that people who love stewardship, I'm one of the strange people who love stewardship, maybe there's something for those folks to teach us. Let's keep going. Next slide, please. So it's your mission that inspires your members. You have beautiful churches, you have great choirs, you have lovely people, and all those are reasons that people are members of your church. But it's the mission that gives us the purpose. It is great to raise money. It is great to form volunteers. It's good to teach new skills. But what we need to focus on is what we do with those people, with that money, with those skills in the community. So talk about it. Make sure you're talking about it. I talk with Episcopalians all the time, and one-on-one, they'll share ministry with me. Our church does this, we do that. But ask them to share it in a loud voice in the community. No, we don't do that. We hide that under the bushel, don't we? Ask people what matters to them about your church. Talk about the ministries that you run every week. Talk about your impact on the community. Yeah, tell me you have a food program, then tell me how many people you feed and what do you feed them, and where does the food come from, and who comes to claim that? Those are the things that give us impact and inspire our members. How do you directly and indirectly serve your neighbors? What does the church mean to your town? Do you ever ask that question? Why does this town support us? Why does it matter that we're here? What would it be like if we weren't here? I wonder if anyone's paying attention. Focus on what you do, how your light shines, how salty you are. Get out there and focus on that, because that's your mission and that's what your members care about. Let's have the next slide. So, I'm not doing all the work here. You guys are doing a little work too. So I'd like us, we're going to have a little moment here, in fact, 5 minutes. I want you at your tables, and if you're one church at a table or if you're a cluster of churches gathered, do this work in community. Let's talk a little bit about what you do in your congregation that you would consider as missional. Develop a list, the top 3 things in your church. I realize that 3 things is hard to come up with because you probably have 20, but think about 3. Let's start with 3. It's a good number to start with. You can have examples like I've given you. We feed 100 people a week. We partner with our local school. We stuff backpacks. We have great programs for seniors. Our annual street fair is always lots of fun. What is it about your community that you want to highlight? What is it about your mission? I'm going to give you a couple minutes at your table. I want to hear lots of noise and lots of excitement, and then I'm going to call us back, and we'll finish up some other ideas here. I hear good conversation, and that's what I was hoping for. Turns out when we think about what our church does for our communities, we have a lot to say. So now we're going to talk about how we teach how to talk about that. So we're not just saying it to ourselves, because there are other people who need to hear that story. Thank you, you read my mind. Testimonials, telling the story, is an essential part of our work as church. It's one of the ways that we need to form folks, and then we need to hear stories, and we need to be able to tell those stories. We do this often in stewardship season. We do it pretty well. Maybe you have in my church we call it Minute for Mission. It's really like 5 minutes for mission. But you know, we try and get that down where somebody stands up and says, I pledge because, right? Well, we don't have to just do that during your stewardship campaign. Imagine if we did that all the time. Imagine if we talked about all the times that we're asked to share our gifts and that we can then respond to that. So let's teach storytelling. Let's do that piece of work. Ask your members questions like, why did you show up here on a Sunday, and then why did you come back the next Sunday? If somebody tells that story, they're sharing deeply about what felt like home. Why this church and not the church down the road? Maybe ask them which program, the ones you've just been talking about, resonates with them most and why. You're going to hear stories about connection and service and personal call, vocation. Those are deep stories to tell. I love to ask ask parents what their kids say about Sunday school. Do they just come home and say it was fine? Or do they say, you know, this is the story we learned? Do we ask them, who did you talk about today, or what story did you hear? When they tell us our own ancient stories and remind us through their voice of our tradition, we hear it in a new way. And then we can tell that story. Those are our stories to tell too. And I think the most powerful story that we can ask people to tell, sometimes the most vulnerable one, tell me about a time that the church was there for you when you needed it. Those times that are dark, or those times that are joyful and you wanted to celebrate, those times when you were just going through the motions, hoping that your faith would catch up again with your action. We've been through all those times. Talk about that. Ask those stories and why people kept coming back to your church to do that work. These are the kinds of stories that we want to tell. And it continues in the next slide by talking about how our ministries impact our neighbors. I said before, tell me about your food pantry and then tell me how many people you feed. Tell those stories during your stewardship campaign. Write it in your newsletter. Put it on your Facebook page. Tell that story to your neighbors so that they know what you're doing and why it matters in your community. Teach that gift of storytelling. Ask maybe people who volunteer in some of your programs to talk about the joy they feel when they show up to serve food or stuff backpacks or lead a class or teach a thing or engage with a group of seniors, whatever it is that they do. Ask your volunteers to tell that story. You're going to hear some deep calls, some beautiful stories, some personal examples, and that will help you get tied in more with the mission of your church. If it's appropriate to ask people who benefit from your ministries, maybe if it's a drop-in shelter or if it's a food program, it's appropriate to share those stories. Say, this is what it means to this family experiencing food insecurity to get a box of food every week. Tell that story to your members because it helps them understand that every dollar they give goes to ministry. And that ministry helps people. That ministry does exactly what Jesus invited us into, to seek, to serve, to feed, to visit, to love our neighbors. That's the stuff. Teach storytelling. So I bet you can guess what we're going to do now. We're going back into our tables. So you've heard about the elevator pitch, right? You have 8 floors, 11 seconds to land the job, get the contract signed, get your idea across to the decision maker that happens to be trapped in the elevator with you. Well, so we're not in that in church. We're not trying to hard sell something. But you do get an opportunity all the time to answer the question, what do you do on Sunday morning? Why are you going there? I'm having a Super Bowl party. Are you coming? No, I'm going to be at church. Why? Answer those questions and develop your pitch. Think about a ministry that really matters to you. Think about a time when the church was there for you. What's important here is that every story, your elevator pitch, your moment of connection is an opportunity for evangelism. I know I said the word, but beyond that, it's a moment to help you relate your connectedness and tell that story to someone else who might need to hear it. Over and over again, what we are seeing in church is that growth isn't coming from our online presence, our social media, even word of mouth anymore. Where it's coming from is volunteers. They come in the side door, not the front door, right? So they start showing up at your food pantry. They start showing up at your backpack stuffing. They start helping you clean up the river or whatever it is that you're engaged with. And then they realize there's a whole group of Christians here doing this work. And they start to come to church. So prepare for those people who are hungry for God's message, who are ready for the community and the table that Jesus has set. Help them find the side door by telling what your connection to your place is. And so what I'd like us to do for 5 minutes is to practice those stories at your table. And you can do it with the person right next to you. If you're a real big community and you're all engaged in this work, you can do it across the table, however you like to do it. But think about what your moment is. What's your pitch? When someone says, why do you go to church? What do you do there? Why does it matter to you? What's your answer? We'll be back in 5 minutes. I love hearing all this sound, this storytelling. Good work. So how did you find that? Was that easy to figure out what you wanted to say about why you cared about your church, what matters to you? Apparently you still have things to say, which I am excited about that. Well, so here's the thing. Everything that we do at our congregations, everything you do in your parish, the stories you tell, the formation that you do, also happens at our diocesan level. I spent 12 years on my diocese's staff, and it was a beautiful gift to work with a visionary bishop and a group of committed people looking at ministry from a whole different way. So I want us to move the conversation, from our congregations into the diocese, the kin in which we find ourselves right now. So everything that you've just talked about, formation, outreach, visibility, support, connection, ministry, it happens also at a diocesan scale. Before I came here, I took a look at your diocesan website. You probably don't spend a lot of time on it, and you probably should, because there's a lot of things that you do. I saw the ministries of personal support, supporting people in their journey wherever they are, and the work you do with folks to support that, and the work your diocese does to support congregations, to support its members through their life transitions, through their journey. The ministry of social justice that your diocese can focus its resources on and connect with the Episcopal Church and the whole communion on doing work for social justice. You're a part of that, and it's a part of you, and it comes through us. You have a really visible environmental justice and creation care ministry here. And I love that you've got these recycling bins. Lynn was telling me all about boxes and ways to gather up things and wash them off and send boxes all over the place so we can recycle things. This ministry isn't just about stewarding creation. It's about protecting and preparing for the work that we need to do. Because all of that work of recycling, of upcycling, of reusing is stuff we do in our church as well. And so this is a ministry that we learn. Your diocese also supports you in governance, in finance, in operations. And your diocese supports education at all levels, from godly play and Sunday school to camp and summer camp and the ideas that we do, to the schools that you run, and to the lifelong learning of clergy and seminarians. And I was talking with your vocation folks last night, how you're also turning vocations and looking at people going through stages in their lives and how the discernment process can be used to help you make decisions about the other things to which you are called. It's not just about a collar. It's about all the things that God calls us to do. Your diocese does that, which means you do that. And that's great. Next slide, please. You have a lot of priorities right now in your diocese. And some of the things that you're focused on right now is the crisis intervention work. When you pick up the phone, I used to work with someone at the DioCal ministry whose job it was to say he was the 411 and the 911 of the diocese. The person you called when you needed a resource, or the person you called when things were going wrong. And our dioceses do that work. Your diocese does that work. When you need them, they are there for you with resources, with people, with ideas, with strategy, with a calm presence, with guidance, with experience. That's what a diocese does. Your diocese deeply cares about your clergy. Your clergy spend a lot of time caring for you, their congregations, the people of God. Who cares for the clergy? The diocese does that work to make sure that your clergy are supported and formed and have opportunities and have dignity and the things that they need to move through their life. Your diocese helps that happen. Everybody I spoke with last night talked about Thrive DCDI. I love that. It's happening apparently everywhere. And the kinds of ministries and the kinds of ideas and the kinds of vitality it's bringing into your congregations is changing you for the better. Your diocese supports that work. Bishop Susan talked about the strategic plan. And that's not just another yawn fest, right? That's not just another committee that's doing work. It's important work that we do to operationalize good ideas, to strategize about the vision, to create a plan about funding and people and ideas. Your strategic plan is really important. And you're enhancing your discernment process. This is really beautiful to provide resources and activities, and you have a dedicated staff member to walk with clergy and parishes through transitions. Transitions are some of the most difficult moments that congregations go through. And to have experienced staff and colleagues around the room that can help you, that can pitch in, that have the ideas, a diocese convenes that work. So when you look around, you say, well, why are we a part of this extra thing, this diocese, this superstructure? You're a part of a family. You're a part of work and guidance and experience and people who deeply are called to God's love, to the church, and to supporting you so that you can do your ministry in your community. That sounds like a pretty exciting thing for your diocese to do. Next slide. So, how does your diocese get to do this work? You're going to talk about your budget. I know you had a budget conversation earlier. You're going to talk about your budget later. And you know that your budget is funded through endowments, and you are fortunate to have some. Not every diocese does. You are funded by free will offerings from your congregations to your diocese. And I know there's an ask involved in that. And as Bishop Susan said in her address, some respond and some don't. And there's no judgment about that, but it means that you create the possibility for the diocese to be able to function. You fund your diocesan ministry. And when you create a body that is strong, the whole body is strengthened. We say a rising tide floats all boats, or other things like that. And what it means is that when we are all pulling together, I just keep mixing up metaphors here. When we are all moving in the same direction, we can do and accomplish so much more. Your diocese funds, shares, provides way much more to its congregations in direct service, support, and programs than it receives in gifts. Think about that. It's not a closed system. And your diocese provides a lot of support for you. How fortunate are we to have a diocese like this? So I bet you can guess what's coming next. Next slide, please. You've done storytelling in your congregation, talking about the ministries that you love. You've done work on yourself. What's your story of connection? Well, how do you not hide your kin? How do you get involved? Tell the story of your diocese. What is it about diocesan ministries that excites you? When you leave here today and you go back to church tomorrow and they say, what did you do with your Saturday? What are you going to tell them about? What are you going to say that you learned? What's something new? What's something exciting? What's something that lights you on fire? Something is lighting you on fire, I hope. I hope something is inspiring you. Are you the kin that we need to shine a light on? Are you the diocese? So take 5 minutes. Talk about that. What is your story of diocesan ministry that you're going to go back tomorrow and talk about? And if not tomorrow, then the next week and the week after that. Why do we have this thing called a diocese, they might ask you in your congregation? Have an answer for them. I'll be back. Here's what I'm excited about your diocese. That you were just as engaged in this last exercise as you were talking about your church. That says something great about why you're here and how you're here, and I'm really grateful for you participating in this today to bring this conversation home. You are the family of God. You are the family of God in this place in Southern Virginia. You are the diocese. It's not us and them. It's not people and place. It's us. Thank you for doing this important work. Don't hide from your kin. When you need help, reach out to the diocese and reach out to your neighbor, reach out to your other congregations and learn from their experience and their process how to get through the situation that you're following, because it's all been done before. So let's learn from each other. Let's rely on each other. Let's lean on each other. I'm really inspired by the conversations that I've heard in here today, and I thank you for your time. We're going on to our last slide, which is really just to say thank you. Thank you to Bishop Haynes for inviting me. Thank all of you for sharing your stories with me last night and today as you've seen me in the elevator. I had somebody ride an elevator with me. I appreciate that. You talked to me for those 11 seconds. And I learned. I've learned so much. And what I do in my ministry is that I go from diocese to diocese, soaking it all up, and then I go and share what you did with another diocese. So your work at your parish level, at your diocese level, is going everywhere. So thank you for giving me more work to do. I love this work. Thank you, family of God.